He thought he knew his home. The polished floors, the grand halls, the life of wealth and comfort, all symbols of success. But one quiet afternoon, a hidden cruelty shattered that illusion. Behind closed doors, someone he trusted was inflicting pain on the most innocent soul in the house, a child who carried nothing but hope in her eyes. What he stumbled upon was more than a family betrayal. It was a mirror reflecting society's darkest prejudice. The question is, when faced with truth this brutal, would he protect his comfort or fight for justice? By all appearances, his life was perfect. A self-made millionaire, he returned each evening to a mansion that gleamed with comfort and order. His wife kept the household immaculate, and the maid, quiet, dependable, and always respectful, was trusted to handle the daily routines. It was a home that looked untouchable from the outside, a world where success seemed to shield him from life's darker realities. But beneath the polished surfaces, subtle cracks had already begun to form. Whispers of impatience, quiet glances of disdain, moments he brushed off as nothing more than stress. He didn't see them for what they were, warning signs. The maid's young daughter often played quietly in the corner, her laughter barely heard against the hum of luxury. She was invisible in the grand halls, a child who carried innocence in a place that treated her like an outsider. And while he believed kindness flowed freely in his home, an unseen storm was already building. That day, when he arrived home earlier than expected, he was about to step into a truth he could never ignore, a truth that would force him to question not only the people closest to him, but the very foundations of the life he had built. The moment he stepped through the door, something felt wrong. The usual calm hum of the house was broken by a muffled sound, a cry too soft to be casual. His heart clenched. He moved quietly down the hall, each step sharpening the unease twisting inside him. And then, as he turned the corner, he froze. There, in the gleaming living room where everything was meant to reflect pride and wealth, he saw a scene that shattered the illusion. His wife, someone he trusted, someone he thought he knew, was towering over the maid's daughter. Her face twisted with fury, her foot raised, her voice a sharp weapon. The child curled into herself, silent tears carving down her cheeks. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. This was not just discipline. This was cruelty. It was racism in its ugliest form, hidden in plain sight, carried out by the person closest to him. The girl was not being scolded for a mistake. She was being punished for something she could never change. The color of her skin, the blood in her veins. His eyes darted to the maid, standing frozen in the corner, trembling, her hands clasped tight as though holding herself together. Years of dependence, of silence, of swallowing humiliation seemed etched into her posture. She wanted to rush forward, but fear kept her rooted. Fear of losing the only livelihood that kept her daughter alive. Every second stretched, pulling at him. Should he step in immediately, tear apart the cruelty unfolding before him? Or should he wait, gather more proof of what had been happening behind his back? The weight of choice pressed down like a stone on his chest. And then the child's whimper broke through, raw, piercing, impossible to ignore. It was the sound of innocence crushed under power. He couldn't stay in the shadows any longer. He stormed into the room, his presence halting everything. His wife's face flickered, caught between shock and fury, but there was no shame in her eyes. Only defiance. And in that moment, he realized this wasn't the first time. This was simply the first time he had seen it. The truth hit him hard. He had built his empire on success, but within his own home, injustice had been festering unchecked. And now, standing in the middle of his perfect house, he was faced with a decision that could destroy everything, or save what truly mattered. But as his wife's cold gaze locked onto his, and the maid's silent plea lingered in the air, one question echoed louder than all the rest. Would he have the courage to confront the very evil rooted in his own home? His wife's voice cut through the room like glass, cold, sharp, unyielding. She didn't flinch, didn't hide, as if her cruelty were justified, as if the maid's daughter were less than human in her eyes. For the first time, he saw her not as his partner, but as a stranger, someone capable of venom he had never imagined. The child trembled, clutching the edge of a chair, her tiny frame shaking under the weight of fear. The maid's silent sobs filled the background, her body leaning forward but pulled back again by years of forced obedience. It was more than a single act of violence. It was years of silence breaking open before him, and something inside him snapped. He stepped forward, voice rising, not in anger alone, but in defiance of everything this moment represented. Every mask of wealth, every illusion of perfection burned away. This was no longer about his reputation, his comfort, or even his marriage. This was about right and wrong, but his wife didn't back down. She stared at him with a look that dared him to choose, to stand by her cruelty or to stand against it. It was a test of loyalty twisted by hate, and for the first time, he realized the cost of choosing justice could mean tearing apart the life he had built. The room held its breath. The maid's eyes begged for salvation. The child's tears demanded it. His pulse thundered in his ears as he reached a breaking point, and then, in a voice that shook the walls of that perfect house, he made his choice. No going back, no covering it up, no silence. What he did next would not only shatter his home, it would send shockwaves far beyond its walls. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. His decision tore through the room, breaking chains of fear that had held the maid and her daughter captive for far too long. His wife's mask of power crumbled as consequences loomed, no longer hidden, no longer ignored. For the first time, truth had spoken louder than wealth, louder than silence. The maid gathered her daughter into her arms, holding her close as if to shield her from years of pain. Tears streamed down her face, not only of sorrow but of release, and in that moment he understood. The real strength wasn't in his fortune or his title, but in the courage to stand against cruelty, even when it lived inside his own home. But the story didn't end at that doorstep. Because what happened inside that house wasn't an isolated moment. It was a reflection of a larger reality. A reality where too many children still grow up invisible, where families bear the weight of prejudice in silence, and where power too often protects the oppressor instead of the oppressed. That day, his choice became more than personal. It became a mirror held up to every household, every community, every system still plagued by injustice. And the question that remains is not just what he did, but what we will do. Will we stay silent in the face of cruelty, or will we choose to confront it no matter the cost? Because in the end, racism doesn't survive on hate alone. It survives on silence. And silence is something each of us has the power to break.